It's the sign of the old world over.
Welcome to another episode of Math and Silly Hats. We're continuing our series on translating. Here we're translating sentences into multi-step equations. So this will be the most challenging of these tasks so far. We're going to follow the same steps, identify and define our variables of interest, underline and highlight key words, then finally write an equation, and here we will be able to check our work since we will be writing equations. Our first example, 5 less than the product of 7 and a number is 2. Our first step is to again identify and define our variables. Here we see a number which is not given to us, so this will be our variable of interest. Let's call this n. Let n represent a number. Next, we're going to highlight or underline our important information. See the phrase less than, which is going to mean subtraction. The product is going to mean multiplication. 7 and a number is 2. Is our signpost that we're going to be putting our equal sign there. Now, before we write our equation, let's review what less than and product of mean. So when we see a phrase less than or greater than, what that's going to mean is we're going to subtract or add from whatever comes next. So we're going to be subtracting, but this isn't going to start 5 minus something. It's going to be this object minus 5. Next, we see product of. We see that prepositional phrase of and then some objects. We're going to be taking the product of these two things. So we will be multiplying by the next two items to follow. Here's 7 and n. Let's put that all together. So our third step is to write an equation. We said the 5 less than will be following what we do next. So we're going to subtract 5 from what we do next. Product of lets us know that there's going to be multiplication, but we'll be multiplying the next two objects, 7 and n. So first we're going to find the product of 7 and n, and then we're going to find 5 less than that. Is equals 2. Now, let's check our work and make sure this makes sense. So first, we're going to solve for our variable of interest, n. I'm going to use opposite operations to get all the constants on the right and all the variables on the left. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this minus 5 to the right. So I'll be using addition, the opposite of subtraction. Let's add 5 to both sides. Here we'll have 7 times our variable of interest, n, left on the left. And on the right, we'll just have 7. Now, 7 is multiplying n. I would like to remove this coefficient. It's multiplying n, so we're going to use the opposite operation of multiplication. We'll use division. So let's divide each side by 7. Seven n divided by 7 will be just n, because 1 times n is just n. On the right, be careful, 7 divided by 7, even though our 7 went away over here, is not going to go away over here. Really, 7 over 7 became 1 times n was n. But 7 divided by 7 is not 0, it's 1. So n should be 1. Now, let's make sure this makes sense by checking our work. We'll plug this back into our original sentence and make sure that makes sense. 5 less than. The product of 7 and a number is 2. So we know our number now should be 1. Let's first find the product of 7 and 1. Product means multiply. 7 by 1 is 7. We want 5 less than that. 7 minus 5 is 2. So we know our answer is correct. Let's do one more example. In this example, we see a word we haven't dealt with before, quotient. 6 more than the quotient of a number and 7 is 8. So our first step, again, is to identify the variable of interest and define it. Here, we don't know what a number is. So let's again refer to this as n. So let n represent a number. Our next step is to highlight or underline important information. More than is a phrase that's going to mean addition. The quotient of, we see that's a new one for us in the series, but it means division. A number and 7 is 8. So we see addition, division, and equality. Now before we write this equation, again, we need to remember what more than and quotient of are going to imply. When we see more than or less than, we're going to think we need to find what happens to the next object or objects, and we're going to be adding 6 to that. Quotient of says, look at the next two objects, we will be dividing a number by 7. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the quotient of a number and 7. So we're going to divide n by 7. We can either do this with division or a fraction, but we need to make sure we divide n by 7 first. Then we're going to find 6 more than that. So we'll be adding 6 to that. That will equal 8. Our last step is to check our work. So let's solve this for a variable of interest, n, and then make sure that makes sense in the sentence. Here I have addition, so I'm going to use the opposite operation of addition, subtraction, to move my constant 6 over to the right side. So let's subtract 6 from both sides, and we'll have left on the left n divided by 7. On the right, 8 minus 6 is 2. Trying to isolate n. So whether you wrote that as a fraction or with the division symbol, the opposite operation of division is multiplication. So to either get rid of the denominator of 7 or to cancel this division by 7, we're going to be multiplying both sides of our equation by 7. 7 divided by 7, or 7/7 times n, is just n on the left. And on the right, 2 times 7 is 14. Let's make sure that makes sense. So, does this work in the sentence? 6 more than the quotient of 14, we believe n is 14, and 7 is 8. Is that true? Well, first, the quotient of 14 and 7 is 14 divided by 7, 2. 6 more than 2 is 8. So that is true, and we know that this is the correct equation to represent our sentence. Hopefully this has been helpful. I hope you have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye!